What's going on, guys? Dr. Andrew Fix here, back on the code. As you know, I'm from Physio Room, one of our several physical therapists on the team. And I just want to thank you guys for being here, tuning into this episode. And this one's going to be a little bit fun for me to talk on. I know, I'm recording this in the midst of the holiday season. It's December 30th. It'll be a little bit later when this actually airs, but we're going to be talking about controlling the controllables. It's one of my favorite sayings. It's one that growing up as an athlete, I remember coaches talking about this all the time. Like, control the things that are within your control and try not to stress out about the things that are outside of your control. Right. So what I remember, being told about a lot as I was growing up, college, high school, middle school, whatever, playing football, was control the controllables. And the two main things that we always talked about that were not in your control during a football game are the referees and the weather. And if you're constantly complaining about being cold, it raining, being muddy, or whatever the weather is doing, or you're constantly complaining about how the refs aren't giving you the calls, the refs are, every call is going against you or for the other team. Those are two things that are not worth your mental time and energy. They're not within your control. Right. And there's nothing you can do besides just play your game the best of your ability that is going to make either of those two things any better. How the refs react to you and how they call the game, and what the weather's doing. And of course, as far as the weather goes, both teams have to play in the exact same conditions, right? Whether that's windy, whether that's, snowy, rainy, you name it. And, there was actually a game that just happened recently, a couple weeks ago, in the NFL. I'm a big football fan, but the Miami Dolphins were going up to Buffalo to play a game in what was projected to be very snowy, very cold. And all of the analysts out there were talking about how the Miami Dolphins weren't going to stand a chance because the weather was going to be too much for them coming from sunny Florida. And honestly, they lost the game, but they came up there and they took it to the Bills. They prepared for the weather and they played well. They played well enough that was a very competitive game until the very end when it was starting to snow in the fourth quarter. And it was a great example that, they were just controlling what they could control, trying to block out the noise from all the analysts and everyone who told them that they weren't going to be able to do it. And they just prepared and they played their game. And on that day, Buffalo got the better of them. But if you were to ask me, I would tell you Buffalo is the better team anyways, and it's a home game for them. That's one that they probably should win at the end of the day. But, speaking of that, they were prepared, right? And you can prepare for things like the weather. You can prepare your environment. You can prepare by practicing, but you can't control it, right? So you can wear the appropriate clothing. You can wear the hand warmers and the gloves and everything like that, so that you are more comfortable in that situation and that your performance potentially is going to be better. You just can't control what actually happens to something like the weather, right? So there's a big difference between being prepared and being ready compared to actually being able to control something. So, why I wanted to do a quick recording on this topic is, like so many other people, thousands and thousands of other people, my wife, Erin, and I were two of those who had their flights and their holiday plans rearranged by many of the mass cancellations by Southwest Airlines. And, we were waking up for, we were sleeping, we were waking up for our Tuesday, the 27th of December. I was going to be checking in for our flight, which was going to be around 6 a.m. on Wednesday, back to Wisconsin to visit some family. And woke up to an email, hey, your flight's been canceled. Click here to reschedule. And when I went to go reschedule, found basically no options, at least not on that airline, for several days. So pretty much, until the holiday season was over. And then when we started searching the other airlines, we weren't finding very many options. I'm sure a lot of other people were searching for the same thing, and many of the choices were being taken before we got there, which totally fine. When we did finally find, a time that another flight was leaving that was going to get us to where we wanted to go, the price was just outrageous, right? It was something that we did not want to spend on that particular trip at that particular time. There were so many other things that we were thinking that we could do with that amount of money And of course, it was on another airline, so we weren't able to use the exact same credit to, put it towards it. I'm sure you guys, get the picture. And maybe you listening to this, maybe you were one of the people in the same situation. So, we were pretty much felt like we were stuck with two choices, right? Pay a ton for a flight that we didn't want to, or hop in the car and road trip 16 hours each way back to visit my family in Wisconsin. And at that moment in time, with like the stress of making that decision, we sort of felt like we were choosing between two bad options. We, not that we hate road tripping, but we really weren't looking forward to driving 16 hours each way when we were planning on waking up, hopping a flight, and being there in a couple hours. The thought of sitting in the car for that long just really didn't sound too appealing to us. So, we had a handful of conversations with my family, my parents, about what should we do? And what we decided to do is just scrap this plan, control the things that we could control, because what we didn't want to happen was, we leave, we go on this road trip, and then the weather is terrible coming back, and we have this just treacherous drive back through the Midwest, through the center of the country, when there could be snowstorms and whatnot in Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, you name it. So what we opted to do, and I'm sure many other people, chose this option. Many people chose the option of trying to find a different flight or renting a car and driving or something. We opted to cancel our trip and control what we could control. So we've been trying to make the most out of these handful of days that we have here. I'm recording this podcast. We were able to reschedule a couple of the things that we had planned for next week and get them done this week. So that was pretty cool. Try to take advantage of the time. And honestly, half of the reason I'm recording this podcast is just to continue to instill this kind of mindset and thought process within myself, and trying not to, stress out about things that at the end of the day are not that important, right? And what I'm not saying is it's not important to go spend time with and be with your families during the holidays. But what's important to me personally, and to Aaron, is spending time with those people, regardless of what the date is on the calendar, right? So, it doesn't matter to me that much that it is Christmas or that it is New Year's, because I would be just as thrilled and grateful to see those people, any other time of the year besides those two holidays. So, fortunately, we had a situation where we already have a flight back to Wisconsin to visit my family for a wedding that we're going to be attending. And with it being a couple weeks advance notice, I was able to just modify that trip that we have coming up. So I was able to add some days onto that trip where I don't have to necessarily move a bunch of clients, because this is, 3 to 4 weeks in the future. It's not too booked on the schedule yet. And try to make the most of that situation instead of just trying to respond to like the stress of, oh crap, now we have to road trip. We weren't really planning on doing that, and we don't really want to be in the car for 16 hours. What can we do instead? And we were able to find an alternative. Now, there will be some family that's there in town visiting that we're not going to be able to see when we go back in a couple weeks. So we're trying to also, make another trip. We're going to try to use the funds that we had put towards the flight that got canceled, go visit some family on the East Coast, and spend some time with them sometime later this spring, so that, we don't have to wait until the next major holiday when we're all back in Wisconsin to see each other. So, I just wanted to basically hop on here and talk about this topic of, trying not to make decisions out of just stress and out of, feeling like you have no other choice. Trying to think about controlling the things that you can control and letting the other things just be what they are, right? If you had plans and then something happened that's totally out of your control or someone else's control that alter those plans, well, you could get really mad, really upset about that, or you could just internalize that, think about what happened, realize that there was nothing you could do or someone else could do, a family member, a friend, a whoever, a spouse, that could have prevented that from happening in the first place, and then try to not let that be such a huge stressor on you. And I know this is really, really hard for a lot of people. This is, quite frankly, really hard for me. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about it. I know I tend to get most upset by things that are either my fault, like if I make a mistake that then negatively impacts other people, that frustrates me quite a bit. Or if there are things that could have been prevented that, that happened, a mistake was made or whatever. But I realized there's nothing I can do about this. There was nothing I could do or my wife could do to, make that this flight didn't get canceled. As much as we wanted to see family, we opted to do that in 3 weeks and then try to take advantage of the time that was given to us here and do things with it, right? Try to, have a New Year's date tomorrow, or try to spend some other time with some of our friends here in town that we weren't going to be able to because we were going to be traveling during the holidays. So, this topic, control the controllables, is actually one of our core values at Physio Room. And what we really mean by that is your attitude, your effort, and your enthusiasm, what we call the AEE. Control your attitude, your effort, and your enthusiasm in as many situations as possible. So if you're working with a client, right, and something exciting or a win happens for them, like, be enthusiastic about that. Have a really positive attitude about that and celebrate that thing with them. Try to keep your effort level high in all of the activities that you're doing, right? And not have like these huge peaks and valleys in how much effort you put into things, because that's totally within your control. Now, there are things that are going to possibly impact that, like, what kind of sleep and recovery are you getting? How are you eating? What's your ability to do self-care activities, like fit in your exercise and whatnot? All of that's going to impact your natural effort and enthusiasm towards stuff. But at the end of the day, it's still within your control to manage those things. So, if you were somebody that was affected by holiday travel cancellations and whatnot, and you're listening to this podcast, I feel for your situation too. And I hope you and your family and friends were able to find something that worked for you guys, either to modify that trip or to take advantage of the time that you had and plan something else later, and that it hopefully didn't derail your entire holiday and whatnot. If you didn't have that happen to you, I'm sure there are going to be plenty of things that happen that are totally outside of your control. You're going to spill your coffee, for example, and you didn't intend to do it. It was a total accident. And even though like that technically was in control, it's an accident, and accidents happens. What is in your control is how you respond to that situation, right? Are you going to let that spilled coffee impact your entire day, or just that like 60 seconds of, shoot, I wish that didn't happen, let me clean this up and then carry on with my day? So I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in, listening to this episode. I hope you go out and in whatever day you're listening to this, go control the things that are actually within your control and let the other things be what they are. And we will catch you back here next time on our next episode of The Code. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if there was something that you liked about this, please go hop on, leave us a review so that we can boost up the number of reviews we have, so we can get this podcast out to even more and more people just like yourself. Have a great day.